Behind me is my mate Joy's surfy wagon. She's brought it to me so that I can get the thing ready for a warrant of fitness check. In New Zealand, older vehicles have to be checked for their safety every 6 months. One of the big problems with a surfy wagon is that you nose into the beach car parks with the front of the vehicle facing the waves. So while you're out surfing, or indeed at night if it's a stormy night and you're sleeping, the wind and the salt air is coming straight in off the ocean and straight into the front of the vehicle, which means an older vehicle's getting an absolute hiding from that salt air. Not to mention sleeping inside. Did you know that every person overnight puts out 2 litres of condensation? This means that the humble camper van has really got the odds stacked against it. When a vehicle gets to be 10 or even 20 years old, it's a little bit of work to keep them legal and safe and on the road. Come and have a look, see what I've done so far. Now, as I say, Nissan, Toyota, Hyundai, it doesn't matter what brand it is. If it's a van, they're all designed in pretty much the same way. They all have the same inherent water traps. So the bottom of these front pillars, once you get the bumper and the skirt off, you'll find that if the vehicle's more than 10 years old, it's quite likely going to have some rust in these bottom corners. I'm going to be cleaning that up, and I'm going to be cutting these pieces out and making new pieces to replace them. Then I'll fill these cavities up with a nice mist of rust preventative, and it will seep into all of the seams and crevices on the inside and hopefully go a long way to stopping the same thing happening again down the line. First step of the job is to get in there with the wire buff and clean off the paint so that you can see just what you're dealing with. The wire buff is a great tool, but it does command the greatest respect. Notice that it's not being used with a safety guard because you can't really. Okay, it's not going to carve huge chunks out of your body, but it will go BANG! And wrap itself in your clothing as quick as look at you. So please be very careful if you're using one of these. Now here is a patch that somebody else has already put in. It's been nicely done. When I cut out my damaged piece, I'll be able to look in behind and just make sure that that's all okay. General rule of thumb I find is the rust on the inside is approximately twice as bad as what you can see on the outside. Now in here, there's pieces I'm going to have to remove. There's spot welds in the middle of the panel that secure the panel to a high strength bottom hinge mount. Underneath you'll see a bit of perforation. So I've now decided where I'm going to cut. So I'll draw some lines. And then I'll go and swap the wire buff for a 1mm cutting disc. And I'm also going to remove these spot welds that I find in the middle. I start off with a 3.5mm drill, and then I go out to a 4.5mm drill. The 4.5mm drill has been sharpened slightly blunter than you would normally use it. That's so that it won't cut through the second skin when I drill out these spot welds. I drill a wee pilot hole with the smaller drill, and then I get in with the fatter drill and remove the weld on the outer skin. But because of the way I've ground the drill, it sort of stops between the two skins, and if you're quick, you'll spot it. You'll either feel the difference, or you will see a wee dot of rust suddenly appear because you're between the two skins. That's when you stop.
about now. Yep, there it is. I'm between the two skins now, so that's all you need to do. I'll get in there with my sharpened power hacksaw blade. Sometimes I use a splitting chisel, but even a splitting chisel is too thick for doing most of this work. So as I say, I've sharpened up an old power hacksaw blade, and I find that's just perfect for getting in behind these things. First of all, I've got to take this little bracket off. I'll be using that again. That's going back on once I've done the repair. Right, using the cutting disc, I always make sure that I'm wearing all of the safety gear. I've had some nasty cuts off cutting discs. Never cut corners. Honestly, it's as dangerous as a chainsaw. But in the right hands, it's a quick and effective tool. An effective tool. By making my cut line on a fold, I'm ensuring the minimum amount of panel distortion. If you do your welding down an unsupported flat panel, it's going to warp, but if you can manage to do it on a fold or a change in direction, you'll be in a stiffer part of the panel and you'll get less distortion. So there we go, that's the spot welds drilled out. I'm going to get in between with this hacksaw blade. Separate each of these spot welds and find out what I've got inside. When I open up these cavities, I invariably find lots of rust flakes inside because there's 10 or 15 years of rust that's gone on inside, so I'll use the compressed air or sometimes even a vacuum cleaner to get in behind and clear out the bottom. As I say, you can see on the inside how the rust has gone about twice as far as is visible on the outside. So I'll clean up what I can with the wire buff. Then I'm going to get my old favourite CRC rust converter and squirt that deep down inside to get all the bits that I can't get. Later on, when I've completely finished the job, done the painting and everything, I'll be putting Fisherline inside that cavity to make it last. So I'm just finding myself a piece of sheet metal of the same thickness, and I'll use the piece that I cut out as a pattern, remembering to cut 1mm bigger on the cut sides to fill up the gap that the cutting disc left. Then I'll mark where the spot weld holes were, so that my new panel lines up with the old panel. Bench shears speed things up immensely. I use these a lot. They'll cut right up to 1.6 millimeter. They get a nice edge, and there's far less chance of cutting yourself on a sharp piece. Here's my folding bars. I've been using these for years, and quite honestly, I've managed. It would be nice to have a set of bench folders, or a box and pen folder even, but they all take up space. I don't have the room. So I've sped this part up because it actually took about 3/4 of an hour to manufacture this piece to my satisfaction. It's got compound curves, it's got reverse folds, it's got tapers, but step by step, area by area, I work it all in and turn it into a fairly close replica of the piece that I've cut out. We're getting close now. So there we go. Tell me what you think in the comments down below. Is that looking fairly like I need it to look? It's a bloody good fit. So here I am with an assortment of vice grips and a hammer handle, pushing it down into place, and I'm going to just weld it in the corners first of all, and then tap in the pieces that aren't touching, and then I can get some more tacks on them. I tack the whole thing at 1-inch intervals all the way around, and then I can seam weld it and fill in those spot weld holes. These 3 spot welds in the middle secure it to the heavy bottom hinge reinforcing plate. On top of the middle of those 3 spot welds goes that small bracket that attaches the outside, what is it? A valance, I suppose you'd call it. Just a small decorative plate that goes over all of this once the bumper's on. There it is, that's now welded in place. All seam welded. We'll get some primer onto it now. I'll tell you what, with work like this, I might end up giving myself Employee of the Week. Then the thing to do is, after it's primed, go around with a seam sealer and actually seal all of the areas where water can get in. This is what the manufacturers don't do. They're happy so long as a vehicle lasts 10 years. After that, they don't really care, because the first owner will have had a good run out of it and would have bought another one by then. Now the headlight buckets, they're only painted with a simple satin black. They always rust on all cars because they're right there in the weather. So I've brushed the cobwebs off, and I'm now just giving it a light spray with Fisherlane on these metal parts, on the front and on the back. I don't even need to disassemble it. This stuff is great. It's packed with solvents. It flows right into the tiniest of crevices and cracks, and then the solvents evaporate, leaving a tacky fish oil residue that'll last for years.